start off with a question. Just curious, you don't have to raise your hands here. If you'd like to raise your hands here. Anyone recognize any of these faces up on the screen? I'll raise my hand. I'm a big ski racing nerd. So let me share for all of you who may or may not know these faces. We've got Paula Moltzen on the far left there, Lindsey Vaughn in the middle, and Christina Kosnick. She's the one on the far right there. And the three of these ski racers, there's something they share in common, and that's that they all come from the same place. They all came and got their start on a ski hill in Minnesota called Buck Hill. And pretty feisty little place, only 309 vertical feet, 3 lifts, 16 runs, but it's actually generated 14 Olympic skiers, which I think is really cool. So kind of gets you thinking, like, why would a little ski area like this be so successful in generating, so many Olympic athletes? Is it, the icy conditions or the high speed rope tow? Well, it turns out it's really just two things. They're very talented athletes. They are driven and, they work super hard, but they also have one really amazing coach. And that's this guy right here. Face many of you probably haven't seen before, but very feisty Austrian named Eric Seiler. He's been the head coach of the Buck Hill ski team since 1956, still doing it today in his 90s. And in fact, many people call him the Yoda of ski coaching. So, I thought it was interesting. I'm like, what is it about Eric that makes him so special? Why is he able to create 14 Olympic skiers from such a small ski hill? Well, it's not the 309 vertical feet. I could make an argument for, the icy conditions and the hot dish in Minnesota, but, really it's what a good coach does. And that's that a good coach works with their athletes to develop a really strong foundation. And, one of the things that's really cool about Eric is he really believes in crawl, then walk, then run. He's very focused on getting his skiers to build their foundation through skills. And you'll see that today. If you watch a World Cup race, these skiers, they're out there before their runs, they're doing their drills, they're doing what they can to constantly be building their foundation. So you may be asking yourself, why is this guy up here talking to me about Buck Hill and Eric Seiler and Olympic athletes? Well, this is me, and this is one of my really cute ski dates. I grew up skiing at Buck Hill. I actually got to ski underneath Eric Seiler, and I got to ski with Christina. I got to look up to her. In fact, we would actually help Lindsey Vaughn get up the rope tow. It was a really heavy, fast rope tow. So she was like 8 years old and she couldn't hold on. So we'd all help her get up, and then she'd quickly totally annihilate us on the slalom course. But it's kind of a fun little analogy, and really why I'm bringing this up today is because from my experience here and from my observations, we're at a really interesting point in our lives. Just the past 2.5 years has been so drastic. It's changed so dramatically. Our customers have changed, their desires, why they're coming out and having an experience at our ski hill or our water park. They're very different than they were before COVID. And so if we know that our customers have changed and their needs and their desires and their wants have changed, that tells us that our customer base has changed as well. So I want to challenge you, those of you on Marketing Cloud this year, to take this opportunity, take this fall, take this winter to really rebuild a strong foundation for your marketing. And that all stems from one of the most important tools that you have, and that's your customer database. So it's, I want to go through today, I want to walk you through just, a couple ideas, a couple drills about how you can hone your database marketing skills, how that's going to help your marketing in general, and, how you can start to build that strong marketing foundation that I think you really are going to need moving forward. So opportunity one, I call it validate, and this is really about just validating your assumptions. Marketers in the room, or all of us in the room really, we operate off a really strong set of assumptions. And you know what? Most of our assumptions are actually correct. Those of us that are working at resorts, we have a pretty strong idea of who our customers are, when our customers come, and what they're purchasing. But have you ever actually taken the time to validate those assumptions? Do you know for sure that your gut assumption is accurate? And I ask you the question, are the assumptions that you operate under today, Are those the same assumptions you had 3 years ago before COVID? Knowing that so much has changed, maybe it's time to reassess those, assess those assumptions. And that's one of the great things I love about Inntopia. I love about the Marketing Cloud, our list builder tools and reports. It's a really great way to prove and disprove the assumptions that we may have. And let me share an example with you. This is from a resort that I get to work with, one of our partners, Camelback. They did exactly that this past winter. They decided that they really wanted to understand holistically, entirely what their customer base looked like. They had some strong assumptions, and they decided this was the time to prove or disprove those assumptions. So we went through a big exercise. We did in-depth analysis and analytics behind all of their customer base. It turns out not all their assumptions were true. A good chunk of them were, but we actually found a bunch of new marketing opportunities for Camelback this winter by doing this deep dive analysis. So what I'd do is I'd challenge you to just be thinking about this. Think about what assumptions you have. Jot those assumptions down and try and prove or disprove them out. And as you're doing that, just a couple questions that you can be thinking about. Super high level, how many customers do you have in your database? This is something that's changing all the time, but right now, could you raise your hand and tell me how many customers you have in your database? Can you tell me how many are emailable or mailable or textable? These are really important things to know, and we have an idea, but let's try and prove that out a little bit. Other questions, other assumptions, we often hear people ask like, hey, how often, what is my renewal rate? How many pass holders are renewing from last year to this year? And we tell them a number and they're like, no, that can't be true. You have your assumptions, but then when we look at the data, we actually see that it tells a different story. So, be thinking about, how many guests come year round? How many guests come summer only or winter only? What do your guests buy? What is your assumption versus what we actually see in the data? And do all of your guests share, similar purchase patterns, or are there differences? Finally, what does your customer retention look like? What do you assume that you see for annual customer retention versus, how it may actually be? And how has COVID changed that? Just some good questions to be thinking about as you really validate and kind of try to understand, how accurate your assumptions are. So then what do we do with that? We take and we've validated some assumptions, and it's really time to learn a bit more about our customers. And again, I'm really, challenging that this is a perfect time in our life to be really assessing what we think we know about our customers. So, again, life is very different now. We have to think a lot about our skiers prior to, or our destination guests prior to, our water park visitors prior to COVID versus now. And we look at their experience that they're having now, the needs that they have now, the expectations that they have now. They're very different, and the demographics and the behaviors of two of your core segments, they've changed in the past 2.5 years. Your loyalists today, your trialists today are different than they were 2.5 years ago. And so I mentioned like focusing on the personas of the customers who've always come. You have this idea, you've always had this idea. That may mean you're missing out on some really big opportunities. And let me just share an example of how we can kind of start to understand those changes. In Inntopia, in our Marketing Cloud product, we've got 2 really cool tools. And one of them that I would challenge you all to get to know is your visitation segments. Visitation segments are traits that or guest types that we set up in the database for our users, for our resorts. Their examples are, new visitation segments are trialists, they're loyalists, they're active, or they're whales, they're lapsed, they're lost. Get to know these visitation segments. They're fantastic tools. Time and again, we go through processes with resorts where they'll want to do some sort of, kind of deep dive, like persona development. And those are great exercises. But I will also say that, time and again, kind of as you distill everything down, it really does come back to these visitation segments. So get to know these visitation segments. And a great way to start to get to know them is leveraging, our demographics dashboard. This is something that, Kurt had talked about earlier. And it's just a really wonderful way to get a visual understanding of how these visitation segments can differ. And it really kind of opens, becomes a gateway. It really opens other ways for you to start to explore your customer data
how do your trialists compare to your actives, and how do your actives compare to your whales? Are there attributes that are similar that you can leverage so that you can migrate a trialist or an active up to becoming your next generation of whales? And these are really great starting points for that. So, as you're thinking about this, as you're getting ready to potentially, hopefully consider getting to know your customer base, some good questions to be thinking about, and particularly through the context of the past 2.5 years. Do we know why you had guests 2.5 years ago that you don't have today, and they've lapsed? Do you know why? And conversely, we have guests that started within the past 2.5 years, but do you really understand why they started? What was it about your experience, your resort, that made them try it for the first time? Was it just a bucket list item? Was it they had some extra money from stimulus? Really trying to understand what's changed is, I think, really going to help you build that strong foundation. And the other thing too is our new customer base. We're not guaranteed that they're going to come back this year. So how confident are we that our customer base will be back this winter? So this will take me to my next one here, the next skill, opportunity, which is all about just identifying. And it's really about identifying your customer behaviors, identifying those experiences and hurdles that drive behavior. If we can understand and address the pain points that our customers are having, we're going to keep our customers happy. And then we know it's much easier to bring back or keep an existing customer than it is to bring back a new one. I should say to find a new one. Let me give you an example. This is Welsh Village, another partner of ours. I got the opportunity to go down and visit with them this past summer. Had a great conversation. It was this conversation. We really talking about what do they see today, and how is that different from 2.5 years ago, and has that differed from 2.5 years ago? And it turns out it has. They had one simple statement that really stood out to me, and they just said, we've got two different core audience segments, or two audience segments that are having very different experiences. Every Saturday morning, it's 9 a.m. and we've got a long line of people I shouldn't say a long line, but we've got a line of people at the lift ready to go. They've got their boots on, their skis on, they're waiting for that lift to spin up. And those are our loyalists. Those are people who've been around. They know what to expect. We've got a second line of people, unfortunately, and those are our new guests. Those are guests that haven't been here before, and they didn't get the memo. They showed up at 9 o'clock, and they're still in line. They're waiting for their lift ticket. They're waiting for their to get their rentals and get set up for their lessons. And so through the conversation, we really just decided, we asked the question, like, what is it that your new guests need to know that your existing guests already know? And so through that, we developed a real simple pre-arrival, just helping to make sure that not only do our new guests have an optimal experience, but that we also continue to maintain an optimal experience for our existing customers. So some things to be thinking about when it comes to what drives your customer behavior. Just some simple questions again, and I think these are important ones. What is it that your loyal guests, your active customers know or love about your experience that your trialists have not yet don't know about? Or conversely, if we think about guests that we've lost since COVID, did your lapsed loyalists love something, and can we use that to bring them back? And finally, again, a really important question. I've asked it before, but really trying to understand how strong your customer retention is. I feel that these are really three really good skills to focus on this winter. Again, it's about building that customer base, understanding your customer base, understanding what drives your customers, and making sure that your assumptions still hold true. So, three skills to kind of, if I were to channel my inner Eric Seiler, the three skills I'd have you, take to the hill with you or back to your property with you is, checking your assumptions, digging deeper than you're used to, and then looking for things that can change behavior. I feel with these three things, you can put together a really powerful, impactful campaigns and programs to really help you kind of elevate your marketing.